Hey, what's up, y'all? It's a little dark on the camera. I don't know what I'm doing. Should have addressed this a little earlier, man. But we had this amazing show today on the Mental Dialogue blog talk station as we were discussing how to love an independent black woman. And I just wanted to recap and go over a couple things that we didn't mention. I got a couple of notes here so that I get everything in because I quite often be forgetting. Hopefully, y'all can hear the message even if you can't really see me. I don't like to be on camera, no way. Black Socrates, incognito. But with that said, um, how to love an independent black woman, I think it's something that is imperative that we figure this out. I think we need more power couples. And when I say power couples, I'm not talking about just Beyonce and Jay Z financially, got millions and close to billions and things of that nature. Not power couples from the standpoint of just a financial one, but power couples, power couples, more married couples to in a sense, create a legacy that's been missing from our community. And one thing, in order to create a power couple, is to understand the dynamic of dealing with a strong, independent woman who, as we said on the show, was created out of necessity, unfortunately, through the cyclical idea of having children out of wedlock, to the extent that the number that we always talk about is 72, 73% of our children are born out of wedlock, and that number has continuously increased over the past 50 years. And so, in order to, in a sense, fix this issue, and it is an issue that should be dealt with, should be faced. We pretty much just tuck it away and just go on as normal, doing business as normal. And it's a shameful in my eyes that as African Americans that it is abnormal to be born to two parents. That's so unnatural when you think about a union of two people coming together to have a child and raise a child. And as I said on the show, I'm not trying to stigmatize that African American men, for example, are not around, even if they're not married to the mother, because there are studies that show that African American men are highly involved, even in situations in which they're not in the same household as their children. But at the same time, it is no way we can say that this is okay, even though it has become normal. We can't say that it's okay to continue to have this number be so high. And so, one of the ways, in my opinion, is to improve this is to deal with the fact that our sisters have, unfortunately, had quite often a lot of people being raised to single mothers or having to do it on their own. And so, another thing is with the women's movement, women are able to achieve things that they weren't able to achieve in the past. And so they have the opportunity to go get a good education, get an incredible career. And so sometimes women put that in front of, in a sense, having a family at an early age. And the reality is as dim as marriage may look in our community, where only 25% of our women are in fact married. Well, due to women pushing off families until later ages, when you reach the age of 55, most African American women have been married, believe it or not. The census showed that only 13% of sisters are not married by that age. So I don't want to get caught up in the numbers as if it's completely grim, but at the same time, if a lot of these women are going ahead and deciding to have children. Most children have children in their 20s. It's not teenage pregnancy as we might think, or as Fox News may propagate. Most women of all cultures are having their children in their 20s. Unfortunately, in the African American community, those women are quite often doing it without being married. Again, father may be involved, but again, not the ideal situation. So let's talk about the independent women just a little bit more. I want to make a few more points. And so with the independent woman, what you have is the sister goes off and she's in her job doing her thing. This is right now attending school, college, about at a 2-to-1 rate to the African American men. So we do have, in a sense, more women going off into professionals and in the corporate world or whatever may have you. But with that said, that sister goes off to that job and she may have people up under her, and she goes at work all day and she's, in a sense, controlling or telling people what to do. Well, when she runs into a real African American man, like we talked about on the show today, someone who actually understands their role of how to lead. And when I say lead, we're not talking talking about simply financially making more money than her. Like that's a big mistake that we make in today's time, is that somehow the who brings on home the most money in a sense wears the pants in the relationship, and that in fact is not true. As we explained, for real men who understand their role, and unfortunately, not that there are a lot of men, because again, we've all come up under this cycle, especially the hip hop generation, of not having fathers around. So not only do our sisters not see the interaction of a father with their mother and how to, in a sense, put that man forward. Well, a lot of boys have never understood their role, and so a lot of grown boys are out here dependent on women. And so again, I'm not talking about the grown boys, but for the men who actually want to, in a sense, lead. It's very difficult to meet an independent woman who's been told all her life or goes to work and is leading to come home and, in a sense, submit to that man. We talked about that word today, and while that word is very negative, and I don't want to go completely into it here, please go listen to the podcast, blogtalkradio.com /mental dialogue 2, and scroll down and you'll be able to hear the show and explain, see the definition of submission. That is not a bad one at all. When you understand submission completely, women, sisters, queens, there is so much power in submitting to that man. We had a beautiful call today by a sister who said, she went into a marriage where, in a sense, she was being strong, but she eventually submitted and it became a better relationship. And so when I hear of great marriages, typically that role is there, where the woman is submitting to the man. Again, a man who appropriately understands how to lead, make good decisions, and things of that nature. Well, what happens is, for a man who is wanting to protect and make sure that his family is straight at all costs. Well, again, whether he's the biggest breadwinner or not, still does not preclude him from making sure that the family is straight. So in a situation in which maybe she does bring in a little more money, in order to work a partnership, that he still needs to be involved in the money situation, because again, all money brought into the house should be theirs. And so my point being is, it doesn't have to be the biggest breadwinner to in fact lead. Again, he wants to make sure the family is straight, and so good decisions, regardless of who's making the most money, are necessary for a family to prosper. So with that said, in a situation in which a man is trying to date a dynamic queen, well, if she goes to work all day demanding, it's hard sometimes for her to come home and turn that off and in fact allow that man to lead. So it becomes very difficult. At least that's how we feel as African American men. As I said on the show, speaking to other brothers who have been married, I'm not having been married, but speaking to my friends who have had some difficulties wanting to have a strong dynamic sister, but having issues with the relationship from the standpoint of this idea of she's always competing on everything. And so we have this issue when we get into, as my co-host Christy talked about, women wanting to be equal, in a sense. She says not the same as men, but equal to men. And I've always said that's absolutely ludicrous and driven by the feminist movement, who in fact is trying to, in a sense, get rid of gender roles and speak of equality as if it's something that's a reality, when in fact it's not. As I said on the show, as a man, I absolutely understand that I am incapable of doing certain things that women can do, and therefore we are not equal in that sense alone. So I don't want to be equal. I want my strength to be brought to the situation and her strength to be brought to a situation. And like any good organization, a leader leads, but the best organization, the respect is mutual. And so that's a situation that we must create and understand, sisters, when you run into a man who, in fact, that, and it's difficult because you deal with a lot of boys, since there are a lot of boys out here. So when you run into that man who understands his role, then there is this clash, unfortunately, quite often, because you as a sister are not really willing to give up the idea that this man really, really wants to take care of you. And so it becomes a situation where everything's thought out and brought up because, it's just who's the best. Let's get this partnership going because we are equals. And again, the best, most successful relationships I've seen are people who have understood that the roles existed before money even came into play in society, and that idea of submitting is a powerful position for a sister, because when you get the man who wants to take care of you, then what happens is, if that woman in fact is submitting to him, there's nothing he won't do for her. And the thing in the feminist movement will say, well, why should a woman even have to have a man do for her? Well, we're in a partnership, but we're doing for one another. And if that man's priority is to make sure that his family is straight, and he's more empowered to do it because he has a woman who is, in a sense, submitting to him, in the sense of him having more testosterone and coming home and wanting sex, and she's not saying, well, I'm too tired, and of course he's helping with the daily chores and not leaving her to do everything and still expecting her to give him sex. But in a sense, the partnership is created where we understand our role, but in fact there is a leader so that this situation can go forward. Will there be times where he may need to submit to her or give her a position? Yes, but it should be understood and said publicly that this is the leader of our relationship, and we need to see more young people seeing that. This huge fight to get rid of these roles and say that we're all equal, I'm still waiting for that marriage that's telling me that it's successful. A lot of times when I explain to people the only successful marriages I've heard, and not that all situations where the leadership role is there or the submission is there have worked, but I'm just telling you the ones that have been successful all seem to have that element, and we're fighting so hard against that in 2016 that we're actually creating a situation that we originally talked about, this cycle of unwed, unmarried parents raising children. Let's get away from that and return to the role. So I speak out to the sisters, not that it's not your fault. I'm not blaming you, but there has to be an understanding that the role of submitting is not a bad thing. But of course, the feminists are going to hear this and keep trying to drive a wedge. And sisters, you're attaching to a movement that in 1969 in fact said that in order to achieve equality for men and women, they must destroy marriage. That's not a quote that's taken out of context. That's an actual quote. And they constantly drive wedges to ensure and applaud women for not wanting to get married, and think that it's actually a negative thing. And I will say this, and I'll close this out. There is no higher honor than a woman bringing life into this world, something that I can't do as a man. So if a woman does desire to be in a marriage, if that is her ultimate goal, the feminist movement would tell you that is a lesser goal when it is actually the highest honor that we've ever seen on earth. And as a man, I could never do that. So therefore, I actually, in the African culture, they held a woman in the highest esteem because she could bring life. Yes, we've lost sight of that, especially for us African Americans in this westernized society. And Christy made a good point that while I understand that I can't be equal to a woman on the show, she talked about, well, men are not all understanding that because we see the messages in hip hop in which we demoralize our women. So yes, that is a bad message, but it also makes this equality message a bad one. We need to get rid of both of them instead of fighting for one or the other. And our brothers do need to respect our sisters more and hold them back on the pedestal that they in fact deserve. You're on the pedestal and I'm out front protecting you. That's how it should be done. Thank you. You got a piece of my mind. My name is Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates. Tune in to the Mental Dialogue Talk Show every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on Blog Talk Radio /Mental Dialogue 2. I'm out.